Welcome to Working Progress. We're so excited to have you join us for yet another episode. And we're thrilled to have our guest, Jill Morris, on today. Hi, Jill. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, this is the first time that we're going to be virtually hosting our podcast. So, we really appreciate you joining us from sunny San Diego. I'm a little jealous that we didn't just come shoot in San Diego, but that's okay. Jill is the co-founder of ChoiceWorks Inc. With your husband, Steve Morris. And you've got nearly 30 years of consultancy work with TTI Success Insights. And I know that you use a plethora of our assessments and tools inside of the work that you do, but you're pretty fond of one of our more robust reports, the TriMetrix HD report. And today we're going to really focus in on how we use these reports with two people, right? How do we compare two different folks? And Jill, I pulled a quote that you said that I'd love to start with. And you said, when two people appreciate the talents of each other, they create mutual respect and collaboration that impacts team and company performance. And I don't think there's a better way to start this conversation today. So can you tell me a little bit about how do you do that? How do you create that impact with teams and companies with two people? Two people can make that big of an impact?
Well, usually everyone that we use the the comparison report with have already done the assessment, and we're familiar with them and their habits, and like if we talk to one person, another person, we think they really need this. Like, for instance, in one of our hospitals in LA, they have some women in their OBGYN department who are a little scattered. And the scatter isn't just about them, but that's how it showed up. So that would be an example. So we were able to offer the head of the department, one's in one location, like lower Los Angeles, and one's way up north in San Fernando Valley, which is north of Los Angeles. What do we do now? So we got them to come together and look at their two profiles, and they're very, very similar, which was a surprise to them. And changed, and they're going through a transition with people. So it was just very timely. So that's an example. But we wouldn't have just got to know them and then said, let's do a comparison report, because we need the data.
Yeah.
The wonderful thing for people to know about these comparison reports, from my point of view, is how it has pulled from the other tools and put in 25 pages, 26 of key things you can use. And usually when we're doing a comparison report with two people, they usually only have an hour. This doesn't go on for 2 hours like a TriMetrix 60, for instance, debrief. But it's enough to get them going and getting them in a dialogue like we're having today, right? Just get them to point things out. And the theme for me of the comparison report is to work better together and have an appreciation for the differences and similarities, the strengths and the limitations of people, and to get them out of the mindset of we're alike or I know you already, when they really don't. So we have a big focus on be curious about the other person.
I love that. And that's so powerful. If we could all be a little more curious, we would learn much more in a day and probably be much more productive. Jill, I want to back up just a little bit because we just launched into a conversation, which I knew would happen because that's what you and I do. But can you talk to us a little bit about what you do? How do you use these assessments and these reports with people? So we have a little bit more context around, okay, I'm using these tools and I know these two people, but why, what? How does that work for you? How does that
Well,
play out for your clients?
well, first of all, we have to promote the value, right? So we explain to them they've already done their profile, but not everybody's running around studying their profile, especially if they're in healthcare or
They've got other stuff to do.
yeah, just like people at TTI maybe. But anyway, so we prepare them in advance, right? We may, depending on who and what and how, if there are two people who are really in a conflict, we're not going to send them the profile yet. We're going to wait and do it online. Do it, show it to them together. But that's rare. Usually, once they agree and they see the value of understanding themselves more, understanding the person they're talking to, their boss, their colleague, someone in another plant in some organization. And then when we send it in advance and they've read through it, they already have their own ideas. They get to see their own strengths, just like you would in a TriMetrix, profile. And that gives them confidence to come on. We really haven't had the only time anyone, and I think this is just once or twice, because they don't trust the person. It could be their boss, it could be 2 levels up and they're trying to get promoted, where they're feeling misunderstood. Now, it could be untrue, but that's where they're at. Then we have to work with them to build a bridge. But once they do it and we facilitate this curiosity and appreciation, I think a key part of facilitating the comparison report is to focus on appreciation for the strengths, appreciation for the differences, appreciation for their limitations, and to understand and respect them. Most people, even before they get the profile and ever, but most of us walk around thinking that when I'm talking, people are hearing it the way I intend.
I don't know, Jill, if you've been on the earth long enough, that's not the case. But yeah.
Exactly. But I think I was like 30 before I finally caught on that they're not thinking what I'm thinking, and they're not hearing me the way I intend. This is a long time of course, training sessions, etc. So the comparison report is a really good place to get them in that curiosity mode and to really start to challenge their perceptions and assumptions about themselves, about the person, about whatever the data are in the report. And I think if somebody's facilitating that discussion, there should be some emphasis on that. And what starts to happen, at least with the people, even some people who are totally opposite, they start to see the person in a way like recently we just did one with a principal in a high school and the IT guy. Now, the principal in the high school is DI off the charts and 8 steadiness and, I don't know, 20 compliance.
Okay, so let's slow down for people who may have no idea what you just said. No, it's okay. We're just going to interpret for them. So you're talking about somebody who tackles problems and challenges head on. They love to work in and with and through people. They have probably a quicker pace and a sense of urgency that might be pretty quick. And they may not really care about the details and how we get there. They just want to get to the end destination. Is that fair to say that that's
well said?
president or this principal of this school.
Yes. Yes. Well said.
Okay, good. And then the
So,
IT guy.
yes.
What's he like?
Well, he's high steadiness, hard to change. He is higher in compliance, not off the charts, but halfway up at least. And he's he's slightly below the influence in the disc profile, and I think he's about 35 in dominance.
So slower, more careful.
Slow, careful.
Doesn't like change.
No, doesn't like change.
So
and
opposites.
Processes and his own way. So this might be interesting for these two characters in the debrief of the comparative report. We were coaching. Oh yeah, it happened later in the comparative report, but when we were coaching the IT guy, Rob, we get to the EQ, and Steve asked him, how does he relate to other people's emotions? And he said, I don't, and I don't want to.
Well, at least he was honest and
yes.
forthright.
Yes. So of course I probed what do you mean by, I just, said, well, tell me more. What do you mean by that? And he just says, I don't need to know their emotions. I just have to answer their questions. Because, IT people, that's all they're doing is solving other people's problems and answering their questions. And then I came to really, at first I was like, oh dear. And then I thought, makes perfect sense. So he's very much, and his motivators, the IT guy's motivators, are selfless, altruistic, and he likes to get things done and do his job well. He doesn't care about strategy, like his dimensional balance page on the worldview. It's not where we'd want him in any higher role with that thing, with that profile. But what happened, we had the principal and the IT, and we had Dale and Rob. And so Dale is, they've had a few glitches over about 2 years. So Dale, the Mr. Hurry up and get her done fast, says, I know that I have probably offended you, and I've been changing it. And now that I see this, I can be even more respectful of our differences.
That's so powerful.
Yeah. So if we sit with people long enough and just let them do it on the comparison report, you can pretty much leave them to do their own work. They do a lot of the talking because it's sent in advance and they have time to look at it.
So this was an instance or an example of a coaching situation. Is that what you were doing?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that makes total sense, right? Let's help these two individuals get along better. Where are some other places that you've used this? I know you have something called, and I don't want to go down the bunny trail too far, but you do have something that I've gotten to experience called the triangle of choice, which is an accountability methodology, I guess, or framework. Would you call it that?
Well, yes, that's a good. I mean, you can. It's more. It is accountability, because the triangle of choice, the bottom line platform of it, is human beings have perceptions, and they have wants, and they have behavior, and that is all they have. That's all we can control. So That's, yeah. So the triangle of choice shows the complexity of humans first, and then dives into and ends with, I'm responsible and accountable for my choices in my perception, in what I want or don't want, in what I'm doing with my behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And each of those categories have different approaches, like perceptions deals with all the crazy assumptions. And I mean, we have a list of about 12 things about perception where things can go wrong and where people start to learn, oh my gosh, I need to think more about what my perception is. And then wants is also fascinating because many people don't know exactly what they want. It's some kind of a word, but it's not something they can articulate, especially if they're moving pretty fast. And so we get to distinguish with them a do want and a don't want idea. So one of the examples we use that people generally enjoy is asking, if you go to what happens when you go to the grocery store with a list, and what happens when you go without a list? So
my grocery bill looks very different in those instances.
And I wind up at home with things I didn't get, right?
Uh-huh. Yep.
But one of the things I kept hearing from people on this want world is they're often more focused on what they don't want than on what they do want. So then I asked them, what happens if you were to go in the grocery store with a list of what you don't want? This is like, oh my gosh, because many people, depending, especially if you tie it in with the behavior style and the motivators, right? One woman in one of the hospitals, after I asked that, she said, well, one time I went in the grocery store and there was a list in the grocery basket, so I used that one. So she took somebody else's do plan,
There you go.
So this is so leading people to be able to articulate what they want, and certainly teams and companies. I mean, you and I and, probably at this point, thousands of people we've met or worked with in meetings. They're so busy solving the problem, but they don't know where they're going or what they want. And interrupting that for some people, it's a struggle for the facilitator like me to keep coming back and asking the want question. Mm-hmm. I once did a exercise on 100 ways to ask, what do you want generically? It took me about 4 months.
Wow.
So that's how powerful the want world is. So I wish we had time to do more with that with people, but if they stay with us long enough, they get it and they figure it out.
Well, and where I was hoping, which you just walked us right into it, where I was hoping we would go with this is, how do those two play together? Because as you were sitting here explaining the perceptions piece and the behaviors piece, I went, oh, well, those two things totally play into the comparison reports. So Are you able to leverage that triangle of choice model with the comparison reports, or how do those kind of interplay together? Do they?
Well, we generally don't do that with the comparison report. If we're doing the comparison report, we have already debriefed their entire TriMetrix and EQ. So, and we will have usually walk them through the triangle of choice before the comparison report, because that's where we can use it. But if we haven't done it in advance, it would be too confusing for people to mix the two when they don't have any awareness of it.
Mm-hmm.
But we do use the words wants and perceptions because the documents that are in the current comparison report, You can find words that go with wants, words that go with perception. How am I seeing things? Is it effective? And then we also get to, like in the triangle of choice, we also work with behavior, and we stress the whole idea that there are 4 components of behavior: what we do or our actions, what we think and our thoughts, our emotions, which are feelings, and our physiology or body sensations, right? That's really what behavior is. All 4 of those components, they're all interacting with each other. They're all equally important, but we can only control 2 of those: what I think and what I do. I can't directly control my feelings. I can't sit here with you and say, and you could say to me, get mad. I mean, why? Right? I'm going to do this all by myself.
Effect. Yeah.
So those are 3 powerful things to teach people. We have other things around it, because the whole purpose of that triangle is for people to lead themselves, and then lead people to lead themselves, which is then, how do I develop the skills that I can lead from their head and their needs? And we then get in a collaboration very similar to what happens in the comparison report.
Yeah, so it sounds like knowing that up front really sets some beautiful groundwork and foundation for coming into a comparison conversation in a much better headspace, and in a way that's going to be a little bit more productive for everyone involved.
Yeah. But whether it's the TriMetrix HD, whether it's the comparison report, whether it's the triangle of choice, whatever we're doing, Steve and I are constantly working on what questions versus telling. I mean, some things we have to tell because they don't have it, so we don't want to lead them down a trail. But once they're in the mode of needing to learn what's inside themselves, then the questions are very, very powerful. And the questions we generally keep around perception and wants before we ever talk about behavior.
Well, and that makes sense too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as you said, we go through life thinking, this is what I'm saying. This is what you're hearing.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Exactly.
And oftentimes we don't even know what we want. We can't articulate it. So
right.
having those pieces of the puzzle before really tackling, okay, now how do I collaborate with this other person who may or may not be willing or wanting to collaborate with me, or be similar to me, I feel like really helps give that leg up, and helps prepare folks for what's to come with getting along, for lack of a better word.
Right. Yeah. If you're attempting to connect to the person, you have a lot of freedom. Like if they say, well, I don't really know what I want. There's an opening there to share ourselves, not every detail, but, just put out, well, here are some, I used to be that way too. I mean, I can say that because it's legitimate. And here's what I have done to start to focus as much on what I want as on how I see the world. And then they start to kind of connect the dots. And then, is there anything that's happened in your life, say in the last little while, in the last year, where you had a really positive experience about something, you said, wow, I loved that. Right? You can lead in with questions like that, depending on the person. I generally wouldn't say that to a CEO, but you never know. So you have to know your audience. But you could say, well, when was the last time, right? You did something, experienced something that really ignited your desire
Mm-hmm.
for your company, for your marriage, whatever they're talking about. Makes sense? But we have to guide them in there and just keep pausing and adding another question or an idea. But it's important that we not say, could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be
Right. Right. You don't want to guide them too hard down
yeah,
the line. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we've talked a little bit about some ways that the comparison reports can be used with people who want to, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to know
Yeah.
myself. I want to know you better. Have you ever had an experience where someone's like, well, I mean, I guess kind of a little bit with the IT
Yes,
example that
when
you
they
gave.
don't want it, they
Yeah, what
don't
happens
want
when they don't want to? Can we get through that? Can we get past that?
to. Yes, yes. I mean, we have had people who have been in a major schism. Like something happened in their company or at a meeting, and they feel abused and misused and whatever's in their mind.
Mm.
Those are hard cases. You can't force it, but usually something will come along that could be an opening. It may be, I don't know that we would use a comparison report, but we would follow some of the habits of the comparison report. If it was, say, with the the president and his two people, or lower down, a manager and two people, and we would just ask the questions of the triangle of choice. What do you want? What are you doing to get it? How's it working for you? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, usually if we've already done some work from, we have a relationship with them. I've done, when I coaching with people, I've just met with their boss. And now they're kind of telling me the problem, and I don't know a lot about it. And I just start well, how would you like it to be? It sounds like you're in a difficult situation. If things could change, what would that look like for you, Betty? For you, Sonia, right?
Right.
And they're reluctant, but over time it starts to feel good because the monkey's really on them,
Sure.
right? I'm not trying to force them into anything. I'm trying to draw out. So that's why starting with the wants versus getting in all the what's wrongs first is a great way to start. If you can, after they told their story, you say, oh, that sounds really difficult. I'm sorry to hear you had that experience. If you could turn this around now, what would you want to see? And just keep, and if they go, well, but so whatever they did wrong, you just come back, well, I understand that. It's very difficult. It's happened to me too. But if you think about it, this has been going on now a whole year. Can you see where that could be a situation that doesn't bother you anymore? And in that case, what would that look like that you would want?
Mm-hmm. It's so
But
powerful starting with that want. That's so
yeah,
powerful. Yeah.
yeah,
And really developing that relationship, because then it puts it right back on them, right?
yeah.
It's in their control for sure. So Jill, we've been talking for a while. That conversation went really quickly. We're almost
About
we're
20
almost at
minutes.
time.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. We're almost at time here. So I just a couple more things. We've talked about utilizing the assessments and coaching these comparison reports. We talked about how it can be used in maybe conflict management or conflict resolution, or if
Mhm.
somebody's really going through it. Are there any other times or areas where you've seen, just sitting down with two folks and their reports side by side to help create impact? Are there any other instances or examples where you'd say, "Ooh, this might be a good place to utilize these"?
We have couples that
That's brilliant.
like in Indiana, right? We have several clients in Indiana, and we know that the mom and the dad, or the person with the job and the person with maybe be the mom, or does the
Sure.
kids or whatever. And we recently, actually just last August, we got to debrief their comparative reports in their living room.
Wow.
And one of the exciting things was the wife has raised 10 kids. One of them is still going to, she's her last year of high school this year. And she did her homework, she redid her assessment, and it looked very different than previously. And so she said, well, I'm really proud of myself because I love gardening, I love flowers, and then I just started doing flowers, and then people asked me to get flowers for their wedding, and I just kind of evolved into this career with my friend who's doing weddings and wherever flowers are needed. And I'm happy with it. So she made the transition from not worrying about the 10 kids, and they're all scattered around the United States, just for her to be able to share there in front of her husband how happy she is with herself, right? And they're very different styles. Her husband is more, more thoughtful, steadiness in the disc, likes comfort, cautious, etc. Smart guy, warm guy. Both these people are very spiritual. And they just talked across what was going on, and they loved it. And they had never, all these years that we've worked with them, I mean, at least 10 years, they had never done that together.
So powerful.
So
How
good.
incredible to be able to have the chance to have a conversation like that, and to have that realization and share that
Mhm.
with your partner in
Yeah.
life. That's so cool. So our time is up,
Yeah.
and I always like to end each of these conversations with one question, and it's the hardest question. But if you can only leave our audience with one thing today, we've talked about um, different use cases for the comparison report, how to really, leverage understanding yourself, so that you can appreciate the differences and one another. Um, we even had a really great conversation about the triangle of choice and starting with once. So we've been all over the place, Jill. What's the one thing you want people to take away from our conversation today?
I would say respect and love yourself. Don't let the turkeys get you down, might be another thing. One of the things that we promote in the dimensional balance page is that is one, the sense of self, and most important, self-direction. So if people are struggling and they can use the self-direction tool, we have a lot of things that go with it for people. And if people are in this mental health, emotional, wherever, we recommend to everyone, and I'm CEOs, all kinds of people, search inside yourself. The book Search Inside Yourself, and keep searching and being curious inside yourself. And that helps us be curious and respectful and honoring of other people. And I appreciate that about you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for having this conversation, and leaving us with those beautiful words to go out on our day. So, thanks everyone for joining us on this episode of Working Progress. We look forward to seeing you back here next month as we tackle our next topic. Have a great day.